Can everybody hear me okay? Is that too loud?
No.
That's perfect?
Fine.
So this is how...
Good job.
Okay, folks, we're going to get started here in about 3 minutes, so I don't think we're really waiting on anybody else. No? So yeah, just a couple more minutes and we'll get started.
It's been really nice here. It's too warm.
Yeah.
Hit 100. Yeah, no, it's been
You should just not.
That's what I thought.
There is.
It's a long ways to go.
Well,
You
it's
gotta
got to be
kinda-
in a place where most people gather.
Yeah, you kind of got to balance how bad you got to go and how far you got to walk.
Well, it's how far you got to walk. You don't want to wait too long since you know you got to walk.
I do that every night. I lay in bed and I go, how bad does it hurt and how bad
Oh.
do I want to get up?
Oh no. No,
My knees,
I got to get up.
my knees,
Ah,
so there's pain just
right,
walking.
right.
So I'm going, yeah, it's only another couple hours till it's time to get up anyway. Let's
Oh
not,
gosh.
let's not, yeah.
You must not have to go very
Well, sure I do. I'm 70 years old.
Oh, and I gotta go. I do too.
Well, I do too, but I'm strong. I'm a Marine.
Okay, so we'll find Double Dog. My son's a Marine.
Right. Some of them started that.
Tell him that you talked to him, he's on Marine, Vietnam.
Oh, he's an Iraqi.
The other vines are okay.
Tell him that I appreciate what he's doing.
Yeah, he's home now. He's been home. Yeah. God brought him back to me.
Yeah. In one piece.
Well, mind-wise, no, but body-wise, yeah. Well, no, he's got that ankle now. He's infantry. No, he's out. Yeah. Yeah. First came home. As years go by, he's gone on a couple of outward bound trips, or whatever they're called, outbound. Billy had a good time on the first one. The second one, he got sick and had the flu, so he didn't really enjoy that. Yeah, it was good for him to get around other guys like him, so they talk. Yeah.
That was my primary home.
Nice.
The older nun, you have to have a good food.
Oh, yeah. My brother was retired after 28 years as CW4, support officer. He was in the Army. My son and him always used to have little jokes when my brother was alive. They tell him, Army means you aren't really Marines yet.
Are we ready to begin? So, before I start, just know that we don't do this professionally. We're going to have a couple hiccups today, and hopefully we won't, but we might. So if you prepare for it and it happens, it won't be a surprise. So just bear with us if we have any technical difficulties. If something happens to the mic, AJ, just Heather or Mia, if you guys can troubleshoot it, and we'll get going. So I'll introduce myself a little bit later, but I do want to jump right into this. We're gathered today to honor and remember our friend our son, and our brother, Kevin Howard. And I think it's okay if we start with this. And I know that he would offer his most sincere hand gesture and pursed smile if you were watching from the back, which I know he is. Now, he didn't want this to be a religious ceremony for his own personal reasons, and we will abide by that. However, before we start, I would like to ask everyone to close your eyes, relax your body, and go back in your mind to one of those moments. Maybe there were few, or maybe there were many, but go back to one of those moments and remember his smile, his inquisitive looks that he gave, the way he would watch everything around him and notice the slightest details in the way people treated each other, the way that animals and little kids flocked to him, how he was always so quick to help out and lend a hand. That's the Kevin I want you to visualize in your mind right now. I want you to remember that his life wasn't always what it was in the end, that he was and is loved. You can open your eyes. Kevin led an interesting life, to say the least. Growing up in the Bay Area offered him plenty of challenges growing up, and he never really felt at home until he joined the Marine Corps at 17. He enlisted during the height of the war in Iraq and deployed twice for Operation Iraqi Freedom. For him, the Marines was a path of sacrificing himself for the freedoms of others. He found a brotherhood that he would forever long for, and found a calling that would change the way he saw the world and his part in it. After the Marine Corps, Kevin found himself struggling to find that brotherhood again. In 2016, after going through some personal growth, we'll call it, he set off to France and joined the French Foreign Legion, looking to regain that brotherhood. In Iraq, he saw the horrors and the pain inflicted on the world, and he felt compelled to act. Kevin eventually found that the Legion is no longer what it was in the days of old, and he found himself still longing to fulfill his purpose. In August of 2016, Kevin told me that him and some of his friends from the Legion were deserting and heading to Syria to fight ISIS. He joined with the Syriac Military Council and the People's Protection Unit, or YPG, and he served alongside other Americans and Syrians as a sniper, a medic, and a commander. In his own words, "I just want to help people, but I'm probably crazy." He fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves, but ultimately he grew tired and decided to come home. And after a long and drawn-out return from the front, Kevin came home. Now, to say that Kevin led an interesting life would be a ridiculous statement, and I don't have the time nor the energy to tell you everything there is to know about Kevin Howard. We all have our own stories to tell about Kevin and what he meant specifically to each of us. My Kevin story began on February 6, 2016. If I could introduce myself briefly, my name is Donnie Farmer. I'm a retired gunnery sergeant, and I served with Kevin in 3rd Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion for a couple years, around 2007, 2008. And up until this time, in 2016, he was just a face from my past. Sure, we served together, but we were years apart. I was a platoon sergeant in Comanche Company, and he was basically the new guy in a platoon that I had deployed with before. The only connection we had had at this point was a hazing incident that involved some of the Marines that I trained. We had a master sergeant that was in charge of investigating the alleged incident, and I was asked to give a statement. So I didn't realize that Kevin was in the room, the master sergeant's room, when I went in there. And when I entered, I saw this young, clean-cut little kid, and he had some little mosquito wings on his collar. And he looked at me like his friends just got caught shoplifting at Rite Aid, and he was being interrogated about it. He didn't look up at me for guidance. He was just a lost and confused private first class trying to get to the 1st and the 15th. I looked back down at him, and I said, "Get out. The grown-ups are talking." 'Cause I was a staff sergeant, so I could get away with that. But before Kevin could even leave the room, the master sergeant started screaming at me too, asking me if I knew anything about the alleged incident. And I said, "Nope." And he's yelled, "Then get out." There's a lot more colorful words, of course. I'll save that for another time. So as I closed the door behind me, I looked at Kevin in the hallway and I said, "I warmed him up for you, bud. He's all yours." And sure, we deployed together and we definitely saw each other from time to time. But according to, and this is his first initial message to me, dated February 6th of 2016. "I never knew you that well, and you were a huge a-hole to me every time I ran into you. But all my senior guys loved you like a father, and I wish I had served more with you." He went on to tell me that he had joined the Legion and that he was struggling with alcohol and drug addiction. And he wanted to know if I had any advice for him because I had made it, as he put it. A little about that: in 2011, after many failed relationships, deployments, and my own suicide attempts, I very publicly got sober. I never shied away from telling others that I was struggling. I was pretty honest about my sins, even when it meant that I could lose everything. And because of this, I began to speak publicly about my own testimony of courage, strength, and hope. And after a few years of this, word got around, and I have to change that because my wife and I found ourselves adopting several young Marines trying to find their way home. But this one was special. We talked about the concepts and the methods behind getting sober and dealing with past internal conflicts of the mind, character defects, moral injuries, questions of faith. We actually missed each other here on the river by a couple days before he left for Syria. It's kind of funny, I was guiding a trip on the river at the same time he was rafting with his friends, but we didn't see each other. We did stay in contact while he was in Syria, and I remember feeling hopeless when he was not allowed to come home for so long. It was around here when I first met Susan, and when he returned, she told me that they were eating at a restaurant in town and that I should come see him. I didn't want to intrude on them, but I decided I'd drive down briefly and say hi. We'd work something out later in the week. And I'll never forget when I walked into the restaurant and I saw him sitting in the corner, that same dumb look on his face and everything. And I held back long enough for him to notice me, and we both lit up. Because for years we talked and shared a lot of stories, and finally to be in the same room together was kind of surreal. We made a plan to have him over for dinner, and I'll never forget picking him up. I had the kids in the car with me, and you could tell that they were a little confused with Kevin's appearance, the face tattoos and all that. And I remember how shocked he was to see me, this a-hole staff NCO that he had, talking about hazing Marines. And now I'm breaking up fights between a 2- and 4-year-old, bending to their every will, just begging for some humility and some grace. I used to be a gunny. When I spoke, things happened. And now I'm reffing fights over who gets a Red Bull and who gets a blue one at breakfast. I remember how shocked he was to see that in me. So Kevin became a household name around the house, and the kids started to give each other their own face tattoos, and it was great. I had invited another Marine up to the house to help him get on his feet, getting sober, and I planned on using Kevin to help me with this task, but he had other plans. He needed money and was going to fly out to, I think, North Dakota or some such place, and he was going to work on the oil fields. He spoke about going to the Ukraine and fighting the Russians and all sorts of other Kevin stories that he loved to tell. But I told him that I thought he was running. I told him that I thought the reason he kept bouncing around between the Marine Corps and the Legion and Syria was not because he had found his calling, but that he was afraid to find it. He had survived so much and been through so much, and yet he always came back to us. What he had was a higher calling, but I told him he was too scared to find it. And I told him that perhaps I was overstepping my bounds, but that I had felt the same way when I was younger. My first appointment for me was my last straw. I left a note on the inside of my blues, which were hung up at my parents' house. And in the note, I told them that I was sorry, but I was too tired of living this life. That it had become unmanageable, and the grief and the pain was just too much. But I told him that, like him, the universe brought me home. I shared with him the reason I felt the way I did, and we talked about what it took me to get to where I am now. And we went to meetings, and we worked in the fields, and we drove through the mountains, and we talked about girls and mistakes that we'd made. We talked about what it was like in the Corps and what it meant to each of us. What it meant to have a purpose, a reason for being alive, to push through all of the pain. He became part of the farmer family. My kids adored him. My neighbors didn't know what to think of him, this polite little tattooed kid cutting down trees and getting stung by bees. He tried to escape once. And I know it sounds like I'm running a cult out here, but seriously, he tried to escape once. I had to work one afternoon, and he asked me to drop him off in town to get some supplies, and I should have known better. But I dropped him off, and he went off and got drunk. And Heather had to pick him up, and he tried to tell her some bull crap about how he had drank a bottle of CBD oil to take care of a headache. And Heather said, "I can smell you, Kevin." And he shut up. And he slept for a little bit, and then he tried to escape. He literally tried to tiptoe out of the house. And my wife caught him and he told her that he'd called a cab and that he was sorry. And she said, "Take your skinny, tattooed white butt back upstairs and wait for Gunny to come home." When I came home, I went upstairs and I found him asleep on the floor next to the bed. Not on the bed, but next to the bed. He had had a lot of CBD oil, apparently. I've never really told anybody this, but looking at him like this, I knew that he needed us. He was our lost little boy. I sat on the floor, no homo, and I touched his face. The way that I would touch my child's face. Like if my son fell down and hurt himself, the way that I would reach and touch his face and let him know that I was there and that I cared about him and that I loved him. Well, I knew that this man had spent his whole adult life chasing dragons. Inside of him was a tortured soul. And I knew this immediately because I had felt that pain. I had felt that heartache. I had seen the evils that men could do to each other. I had seen the women and the children and the pleas for help that I could not answer. I had seen myself slip into moral dilemma after moral dilemma. And I had felt that despite all of this, if I were to keep moving forward, I would find peace and I would find happiness. That's what I told myself. And I knew the pain when it didn't happen. And then it didn't happen again. And then it didn't happen again. And you know, with all of Kevin's accomplishments and many claims to fame, which he had many, you know what I envied the most? Was his grace. Because when I fell on my face time after time, I remember beating myself up over it. And Kevin seemingly could just dust himself off and pick up and go. Now, I remember after maybe 2 days of recuperating, he came downstairs and he sat with me in the morning. And he told me that he was ready to quit. That he knew he really needed to help this time around. That he had become powerless over his addictions, his past trauma, and that he wanted to face whatever it was that he was running from. So we went to work. Literally and figuratively, we went to work. We went to meetings. We had talks about recovery and relapse, the struggles that would come with that first year. He came to the farm and he helped around the yard. Always the most respectful and thoughtful man. While I was away at a retirement, my wife Heather sent me videos of him and my cousin Jonathan teaching my son how to hit a baseball. I'd pull up to his mom's house, and he'd jump in the passenger seat and clap his hands and rub them together. And he'd say, "What are we doing today, boss?" And here's where the story stops being about Kevin and becomes about all of us. So one day Kevin tells me that he's gone to California for a little while and that he'd be back, lured by promises of love and acceptance. Now, we're not here to torture ourselves, but we know how the story ends. The tragedy is that a man like Kevin Howard, a man that was so quick to push a little harder for someone else, wasn't able to do the same for himself. You see, it takes guts to do the things that Kevin did. To bravely go over there without any support, without a flag, and fight for what he knew was right. That's courage, and no man can take that from him. But he wasn't brave enough to fight the battles that needed to be fought. The battles that each of us face on a daily basis. Those battles that became too much for our Kevin. And the real tragedy is not that we lost Kevin. The real tragedy is that there will never be another like him. No spell of time or period of grieving and mourning is going to replace that chemical cocktail that only Kevin gave us. You guys know what I'm talking about. When your body has a physiological reaction to seeing somebody special to you. Well, we're never going to have one of those Kevin cocktails again. We might get a hint or a taste every now and then when you hear a song or you hear his name, but it will never be the same. And I think we know that there's no moving on from here. There's no getting over this. This is a pivotal moment for all of us, and we have to treat it as such. We will never be the same, and the sooner that we can accept that, the sooner we'll learn how to take what Kevin gave us and use it in whatever way the universe has planned. Now, Kevin's mom and my wife and I have spoken about an idea that Kevin and I spoke about a lot, to be honest. The short version is basically a nonprofit that teaches resiliency and mental toughness in a wilderness setting for our returning veterans. And as we put this idea together, and we breathe life into it, I know I'm constantly asking myself, what if? Not what if this fails, because it won't. But what if this was a reality when Kevin was here? What if Kevin was involved in it? How many lives could he have saved? How much impact could he have had on the world? What if he kept pushing? What dreams might have come? How much could we have learned from him? And how many could have been touched by his story? What if? Now, before we get wrapped up in our grief and our pain, I want you all to look up here at me. What if you kept pushing? What if you kept pushing? Or you. Or you. What if you waited just one more day? What if you shared your story? Now look at me, because I'm not mistaken. This is not about somebody else. This is about you. It's about you. It's about all of us. This is about why you're here. Whatever your heart tells you to do, that's it. Don't rob us of your gift. Because just like how Kevin took himself from us and all the beautiful moments we had with him, those weren't his to take. Those were ours. The same thing goes for every one of you. You have now been touched by something that will leave a mark on you that will never, ever go away. And I'm telling you that from experience, because I've been dealing with this for 20 years now. It does not go away. You'll never be the same after this. And it doesn't matter how hard you try and how deep you dig, you will never fully understand why he left and why this hurt so deeply. But it's not about understanding. It's about not giving up. It's about carrying the weight that's been placed at your feet. You know that weight. The challenge that the universe placed at your feet. The ones that you know were put there to challenge you, to promote growth. That weight is yours. Nobody asked you to carry it, and there's no promise of fortune or favor if you do it neither. That's not what this is about. All you have to do is carry it. It's gonna hurt, you're gonna get tired. But let me tell you a secret. You're not alone. You are not alone. You don't have to carry this on your own. Remember Kevin? Remember how you felt after we lost him? How you said to yourself, if only he would have called me. If only he would have stayed a little longer. When the going got tough. When it seemed like it was too much to carry. If only he knew how strong he was. If he just allowed himself to grow. Allowed himself to love and to be loved. And to forgive himself. Now again, before you go back to your sad place and we bust out the movie projector and we watch Mr. Bradley Pitt get mauled by a bear, before we go crazy and get super, super emotional, look at me. Now look at each other. I'm not saying it to say it. Look at each other. You don't have to say anything. After today, you never have to again. What if the next time that depression, loneliness, anger, and sadness comes back to haunt you, what if you call someone? Not post some crazy message, call someone. What if you stay just one more day? Just one more day. What if you hang in there and you fight those private battles just a little longer and hold out until the miracle happens? What if you knew how strong you really are? What if you allow yourself to be loved? What if you allow yourself to be loved? What if you can forgive yourself? Kevin took himself from us, but in doing so, he did give us this. The collective understanding of what happens, not just to those close to the departed, but to the whole world when they put their weight down and take from us their physical presence. We know the pain and the anguish that comes with this, so each one of us should be able to leave here today with the understanding that it's not about us. We've seen the impact that it has on the whole group. It's about the tribe as a whole. It's about not giving up. Now, one last time, close your eyes. Relax your bodies and go back in your mind to one of those moments. Maybe there were few, or maybe there were many. But go back to one of those moments and remember his smile, his inquisitive looks that he gave, The way he would watch everything around him and notice the slightest details in the way people treated each other. The way animals and little kids flocked to him. How he was always so quick to help out and lend a hand. That's the Kevin I want you to visualize in your mind right now. I want you to remember that his life wasn't always what it was in the end. That he was and is loved. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take just a moment. We're going to play a song, and then we're going to open up the mic to anybody that would like to share something about Kevin, and followed by military honors. At this time, if anybody would like to come and share anything about Kevin, that was part of the show. At this time, if anybody would like to come and say anything about Kevin, if you have the mindset of, well, I'm holding off until the service in San Francisco, use this as a rough draft. Use it as a practice run. Because there's people here that won't be there in San Francisco, and I'm sure they'd rather hear it from you, even if you're stumbling through it, than watch it on a video. So anybody wants to come up, I'm going to leave the mic here.
I met Kevin shortly after his brother brought him down to Springfield. From there, his brother and I were very devastated. He was fighting in Portland, and despite his problems, this young man came to where we live and helped us in a time of need. I was sitting with him one time, this time to me was the destruction of a forest fire. He said to me, this place looks just like an airstrike in Iraq. All I have to do is look at him and think, he came here when he's got his own problems to help his mother and myself. Didn't stir a little bit me.
So I wasn't intending to speak, but I think one of my first memories of Kevin was him driving me through 29 Palms in his little Datsun that he threw a Corvette into, and being terrified out of my mind. I don't think I've ever been that scared in a car or any vehicle. That was my first memory of him. So we, hung out a bit while we were still in the Marine Corps, and then he was from the Bay Area and I was from the Bay Area. So when I came out a little bit before him, then when he came down, we started going fishing together, Alameda, San Rafael, and some other spots. Spent a lot of time together. Kevin was an exceptional person,
Alright, for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm AJ, and I'm Donnie's little brother. It was through him that I got to actually get the opportunity to know Kevin. Um, Rewind a little bit, the first time I ever heard of Kevin was Donnie trying to spread the word when he was stuck in Syria and trying to get back here. And, you know, here I thought there was this extraordinary story of this young guy just trying to get back home. And then, you know, when we received the news that he had made it home, it was such a joyous thing to just be like, no, you know, like, I've been a part of that and just, you know, and come to find out that was only a small part of Kevin's story. My brother proceeded to tell me some of the other things, and I actually got to meet him. I had gotten off work, and Donnie was driving him to the train station at Clear Falls. And on the long drive there, we kind of talked and got to know each other, and we found a marine bar in Klamath Falls, and it's kind of run by the local chapter of you know, a bunch of retired Marine guys, and they were closed, and we knocked on the door, and here's myself, you know, in a hoodie and a beanie, scruffy face, and there's Kevin, face tattoos, and then I think even Gunny might have had some scruff on his face at the time. And once the guy found out we were all Marines, he quickly invited us in and told us a little about the place and offered us some drinks on the house. And
How many?
there's just a couple, you know, I don't know. But, you know, I got to know Kevin a little bit more there, and then, you know, we went to take him to the actual train station. As we were parting ways, he gave me some Monopoly money, we like to call it, but it was some Syrian and Iraqi money. And, you know, in just that brief time we had hung out, he, you know, wanted to give me a gift, you know, upon his departure. And then he came back, and he was up here for a while, as you heard, living on the farm, helping out. And it was really awesome to see him interacting with the kids. You know, stories of, you know, him teaching my nephew how to play, you know, hit a ball and stuff. You know, my kids were there too, and they were learning and interacting with him. And he really seemed like he was going to be a fantastic success story, and I couldn't wait for him to share that with everybody. And you know, it was tough finding out when he had left and moved down south. Because part of me was afraid I wasn't going to get to see any more of that growth, and then part of me was a little apprehensive, you know, and worried that, you know, maybe that path wasn't the best for him. But regardless, I was very honored and lucky to get to spend the time with him that we did here. And like you keep saying, that smile, that side smile, that little half-cocked grin, I can see it right now, sitting in that Marine bar, maybe after our second drink, you know, as we exchange stories, and he'll always be remembered by me, and I'll do my best to always tell his story from what I know of it, and I look forward to sharing more of it for some of you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm the older brother. I just want to say two things really quickly. I don't have anything prepared, but I want everyone to know, everyone who had a part of my brother's life and whose life he touched, that you helped him. You did. Donnie, you helped him. Mom, you helped him. I helped him too. And it was not our fault. And if you feel guilty, it's important that you let that go, because we were there as much as we could be there. And the choices that people make are the choices they make. And on that same note, I think it's important to know that Kevin made choices in his life that weren't always good. Sometimes they were hilarious, hilariously bad, hilariously good as well. But at the end of the day, what I try to remember is that no matter what, there are innumerable lives that he saved. There are people out there who named their children after my brother. and he's their godparents too. And for every left turn where he could have turned right, he also touched someone's life when he took that left turn. We have no idea how things could have been or we know how things are. And I want to remember my brother for the lives that he touched and for how much better my life is for having known him.
Hi everyone, my name is Heather. I was kind of hoping to not get up here in front of everybody, but I wanted to kind of show a funny side and go in a little bit more of a story that Donnie kind of touched on a little bit on how Kevin had the experience with some bees. That was with me. He stayed with us for a while, and anytime we needed help with something, it didn't matter if he had the worst sunburn on the planet, he would help, and he would jump in, and he would help us where we were needed. And on our farm, we have a lot of poison oak and bushes under some trees that I was trying to get cleared out because we had a refinance lady coming, and she had to be able to see the property. So it was summer, and Kevin and I and Mia all got dressed up like we were, he said, going to war, because we had camis on and the full jackets and hats, and then he tried to have fabric softener hanging out of him because he said it was good for the bees, and I laughed at him and I was doing it without, so he took it off. Pretty soon something hit me in the neck, and I thought, oh man, he's weed eating. I must have got a rock, and I went in and something got me on my side, and then something got me on my leg, and I quickly was like scrambling to get in the house, and bees were falling out of my jacket, so I left the jacket on the couch and realized it was bees, and I needed to go back out and get Kevin. And as the time I'm running out to get Kevin and I'm waving my hands, he gets hit in the arm. He's like, oh, why'd you shoot me? And he kept swearing up and down that I shot him with something. I'm like, both my hands are in the air, there's not a gun, I swear. And he kept telling me it felt like a rocket launched a pellet gun or a 22 at him, and this must be how it's felt. And I just laughed, and it kind of made me feel better that here's we think of Kevin as a kid, and he's only, 9 years, maybe 9 years younger than I am, and very much a man. But we looked at him as a kid, and we brought him into our family as a kid. But then I'm looking at him like, dude, you're supposed to be this big, strong Marine. You've lived in bombed down buildings. You shoot people. Like, come on, it's a bee. It's not a bomb. Like, what's wrong? And he's just whining over this little bee sting on his arm. Mine is all welted up, and I'm putting stuff on it, and his is lost in his tattoos. He couldn't even find where the direct hit was, in his words. So we put baking soda and water on a couple different places because he didn't know which one it was. It was just all painful. And that's one of my favorite memories of him, because right after that, he was like, "You gonna let me use the fabric softener now?" So we went back out. We had fabric softener in every part that we can hang fabric softener off of. And we didn't get stung by another bee. We did, however, end up with quite a bit of poison oak, which he was not a fan of either. Brought out a whole other side of the young Kevin we refer to as the kid. But in that part of the property, I always look over there and I remember that, and I think of Kevin and just how, he got right back out there, even though the bee sting stung for like ever. It felt nice that here's a grown man whining about a bee sting right alongside me, and got right back out there in it. And in that side of the property, I've never noticed before, but there's a tree that I will never allow to be cut down because it's right where he was at when he got stung. And on this tree is a perfect white heart that is natural. The bark made a white heart, and that tree will never come down. And there's a few different places on our property where Kevin just really dug in and helped a lot, and those are all forever special memories. And we have a big rock in the front of our yard that he was not very thrilled about helping me move to that spot because he thought that rock was perfectly fine where it was. But he helped me move that, and we're probably going to have an in memory of Kevin on it. And we'll have quite a few of those places on our property and places in us that are never going to go. Kevin had an energy about him that was unlike anything that I could ever explain to anybody. I had an interesting childhood, and so face and neck tattoos have always got me like, okay, tread lightly, make sure you're not going to bite, and then we can be friends. And when Kevin walked in the door, and he had face tattoos and neck tattoos and arm tattoos, and I mean, all you could see was his blue eyes. But he shook my hand and he did his bow, and I just felt at peace. I didn't feel uncomfortable at all with Kevin. And my kids, and you know, at first they were like, I don't know about this guy, but within 20 minutes he was their best friend, and they didn't want him to leave. And after he did leave for a while, they kept, my son, AJ, mostly would have me take a video or a picture to send to Kevin to tell Kevin he needed to come home now. And at one point, AJ told me while going to bed one night, where's Kevin? Kevin needs my daddy. My daddy needs to go get Kevin and bring him home. And Kevin was in California at that time, and we haven't seen him since. Kevin is a big part of our family. He touched all of us. And we brought him in, we made him part of the family. And we're gonna have very strict rules on the guys after this one if they get brought into the family. You're not allowed to leave without making that one more day and talking to us. Because there's always one more day. There's always one more day. There's always people that love him, and I know without a doubt that in the end, Kevin knew that he had a lot of people that loved him. A lot of people that loved him. But as you all know, Kevin, when he made up his mind and he was determined and committed to do something, he did it. And right now, the biggest thing I think we can do is to, like my husband said, keep thinking about that one more day and bring all those good memories of Kevin and keep it with you. And when you might feel sad about what happened, remember his smile, remember his laugh, and remember how much he touched your heart, and make sure that you share his love and his story and his energy and his compassion and his grace with everyone, and add that as part of your life as well. Thank you all.
What an afternoon, isn't it? This is a day like, you're going to remember it for a long time. Like you're going to remember Kevin for the rest of your life. Remember that today you learned that each one of us have a big role to play in this life. We need to start talking to one another. We need to tell each other when you're in pain, when you're feeling great about something. That's what life's all about. Being able to share your experience, whether they're good or whether they're bad. These are things that are going to walk you through the rest of your years. And today, Donnie, I want to thank you, myself, and for, I'm sure, everybody here, for this mission that you've taken upon yourself. And with Susan behind you, I know it'll go. This is something that so many of us have walked through our life. I'm now into my 60s, my early 60s, and at times I feel like I'm almost 100 years old because demons follow. And everyone have demons, whether it's through drugs, alcohol, or bad relationships, or a bad attitude. There's a lot of that crap going around. Remember, love comes from the heart. And this young man today, even though he's not here with us today, not in physical manner. This young man brought this group of people here today to remember one thing, if nothing else. We're human beings. Remember that. So see, even though Kevin's not here today to be with us, he's here. He's here in the spirit. Keep that spirit in you. Keep a good mind with you. And remember, we're all human. Treat everybody kindly. I only met Kevin a couple of times, very, very short times together. But Holly, you said something that reminded me of the first time I met him. He came into my home, and I'm looking at him, and I've known Susan for quite some time, and Sam came into my world not too long ago. Kevin came through my front door, and all I could do was say, holy shit. What? I was not aware of tattoos. I wasn't aware of what this young man had done in his life. At 62 years old, I wished I had done 1% of what Kevin did in his few short years. No matter how you judge your life, if it's their accomplishments or taking out the trash that day, remember kindness will take you a long, long way. Thanks for everybody coming out this day, and I hope that there's other people to share. There's something when people pass. When people pass for me, I feel like I gain something special. Even though I don't know them that well, I can leave here today thinking that if Kevin did nothing for me in my life, he made me realize or remember the fact. I slough off a lot. I really do. I need this guy's brass balls to help get me through the rest of my life. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tamara, and I didn't know Kevin. I don't know any of you here. I do know my friend Hans. However, I seen a Facebook video of Kevin, and I was drawn to him because I grew up on Fort Lewis military base. And my dad went to Sinai, Egypt, and he came home 6 months later, and he took his own life as well. And so I was drawn to Kevin. And I wanted to come here and show my respect. I just wanted to say that I was a total stranger here and just wanted to show my respect for Kevin. And I feel here.
Following the presentation of the flag, which we are going to be doing in a little, it's not the traditional way that we're supposed to do it. However, we will do that in San Francisco when we have a Marine Reserve detachment that'll be here to do it. But I want to present this flag now because the way that it's folded, which is proper, but it was folded by us that went to Tucson to get him. Without going into great detail, a number of us, about 8 or 9 of us, went down to Tucson to get all of Kevin's personal effects and bring them home to Susan. And we didn't anticipate that it was going to be what it was, but we were allowed to go to where they performed the cremation, and we had Kevin, he was in a box, and we had the flag that was in the box in a separate box that would be given to the honor guard, and we decided that it would be fit if we draped the box with the flag and we said a prayer, and we kind of lived in that moment for a little while. And then everybody that was present folded that flag. So, you know, Will and the other Will and Al and Ryan, Doc, Justin, I mean, all of us, we got a chance to fold that flag and have our hands on it. And that's the way that I want to hand it to you today, Susan. And then we will do it in a more official capacity later. After we present the flag, I'll come up here to the center. I'm going to ask you to rise for military honors. And if you are a veteran, and it's specifically for the Marines because we're stiflers on saluting with or without a cover, render a hand salute. Okay? I will give a, present arms, and if you are a veteran, render a hand salute facing the flag. Because this, you need to realize that, sure, there's customs and courtesies, but screw all that. This is the last time that you're saying goodbye to a comrade. You should have zero shame at all in breaking some protocol and saluting. Even if you're in civilian clothes, it does not matter. And then following the presentation of the colors, we'll do military honors, and we will have, there will be some rifles firing. So just be prepared for that. And then after that, I will call present arms, and then we will play taps. Okay? Please rise for military honors. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Gentlemen from the VFW, thank you so much for coming down here today. There will be a reception in the clubhouse, which everyone should know where that's at. If you want to take some time down here by the river and then make your way up there, we do have food and refreshments. Thank you.
No, I won't.
I've got room in my car for you if you want. I'm taking you.
You going?
Just the four of us. There's four.
Okay, all right. Oh, it's so lovely. Thank you so much.
See you some other time. You gonna go eat?
I'm so fat now.
Just go.
Kevin's friends of mine can make it, so we